Right, just going live on YouTube now. Right, that is now live. Okay, so we're gonna start the room now. Today we are talking about is hypnosis even real? Which may sound like a very weird thing for hypnotists to be talking about, but we are talking about it because there is ambiguity as to how we define hypnosis, certainly in the science, how we measure the results of hypnosis versus non-hypnosis situations. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our co-host today is Steve. Let's check your audio, Steve, see if we've still got that feedback loop coming through.
Yeah, I can't. Hi there, everybody. I can't delete the audio off the laptop at the moment.
Is that working okay there, Steve?
I can hear you. Can you hear me all right? Okay,
so I can see your lips moving on there, but I can't hear you through Club Deck. So you might have to unmute yourself from Club Deck, which is just on the right-hand side of the screen.
It says I am unmuted. Hang on. Audio effects.
I don't know if you can see that. So Steve's just working out how to use the unmute button on Clubhouse there, but great to see a few of you already in the audience there. As a quick introduction, my name is Adam Cox. I am a clinical hypnotherapist, podcast host. One of my podcasts is called The Hypnotist, so that goes out a few times each week, each with a different, unique hypnotherapy episode. I can see we've also got some content creators in the audience already. So good to see Matthew there. Yeah, let's see how we're getting on with Steve's audio.
Yeah, I can't unmute from, how's that?
It's just the unmute button that you want to press there.
Yeah, it's not playing ball, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can, again, I think you're coming through on Zoom, maybe not on Club Deck at the moment.
Yeah, it's not showing me the unmute button.
No, I can't hear you there.
I've got you.
Very strange. I can see that the mute button is on
no,
you on Club Deck, so I think that's what it is. So when you're in Club Deck, if you scroll all the way to the right, and then there's a mute button at the top just under public room. So if you press that, that should unmute you.
So all the way to the right.
Just while Steve's looking at that, brief explanation, because obviously we're normally co-hosted with Rowan and Graham. They're not skiving, just to let you know. Graham Graham kind of is skiving. He's got a Christmas party that he's attending at the moment with his military mates, and Rowan has been recently a little bit ill. He is going to try and join us from the audience at some point today if he can. So if he does come up, we'll certainly wish him well in his recovery to full health. How are we getting on there, Steve, with your mute button?
No, it's not allowing me to unmute it, unfortunately. Let's just have
what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if by moving you to the audience, then inviting you back, that then leads you without being a thing.
How's that now? That should work now.
And then I'm going to invite you back on stage.
How's that now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
If that's working.
Can you hear me now?
Can we get you back on stage there, Steve? Do you want to raise your hand to come back on stage, and I'll see if I can.
Right.
This is all very strange. Apologies for this in the audience. This is what happens when we don't have Graham here to kind of sort out all the technical bits.
No, it's not.
All right, here we go. Hands raised. Sally Thomas. Right, let's get Sally up while we're figuring out what we can do. Hi, Sally. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Adam. Yes.
Perfect. So we know Clubhouse is working. We're just going to figure out a way to get Steve back on stage and talking as well, because we were having a nice chat on Zoom just beforehand. So it definitely is working. We know he has got audio. We just can't get audio on Clubhouse without the horrible feedback loop that we're having. So today, Sally, we are going to be talking about, is hypnosis real? And some of the lines of thought here that we were thinking about is, first of all, how do we define hypnosis? So I don't know if you have a question or just what your thoughts are on what hypnosis actually is.
Oh, wow. What a question. I've been asked that several times. What is hypnosis? To be honest, I think it's different for different people. I understand what I mean by it. For me, experiencing hypnosis has been sort of a life changer, because it's enabled me to focus on some issues and internally solve those issues. Because we do often have the resources ourselves to deal with it. We're just not consciously aware of those. And what hypnosis can do is let those resources come forward to let you deal with an issue you have. But I think hypnosis is different for everybody. I mean, quite a few people have said, "Oh, that was really relaxing," and it's not. It's a byproduct for me, if you like, of hypnosis. It's not a be all and end all. But if they get that out of it, and that's all they want, as far as I'm concerned, that's good enough for me. But I've certainly worked on a lot of things for myself. And resolved a lot of them. So sometimes people think they're not strong, and they are. And, under hypnosis, they can bring that strength out. I came up on stage really just to support you, because you were on your own and having problems tonight. I missed why Graham isn't here, but
yeah. He's skiving, Sally. He's got.
Can you hear me now, Adam?
And he's kind of prioritizing that. Steve, if you can hear me, because I sent you a message on Zoom, but maybe if you just kind of disconnect from Club Deck and then rejoin on your phone, because I know in previous weeks that's not been an issue at all. So we'll just get you back on the stage, but via your mobile phone rather than through Club Deck. Which, if you haven't used Club Deck, it's basically a PC version of Clubhouse, which can be quite useful if everything's working okay, but it is a bit more complicated. Sally, one of the first things that I did when I was learning clinical hypnotherapy, I was mentioning to Steve before, I learned with the LCCH, so the London College of Clinical Hypnotherapy, that at the time was affiliated with the University of West London. So there was this kind of academic component to the clinical hypnotherapy. So you're kind of learning the theory, but you had to kind of do these dissertations to kind of back it up with journal entries and kind of referencing and all that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I had this kind of niggling question while I was learning hypnotherapy as to whether or not hypnosis was real. So my first dissertation title, kind of assignment really within hypnotherapy, was asking the question, is hypnosis real, or are participants simply playing along? And actually, there's a lot of evidence, whether it's stage hypnosis or clinical hypnotherapy, that it has more to do with expectation and placebo and just following the suggestions than some kind of definable hypnotic state. And I'm sure a lot of people in the audience will be familiar with the state versus non-state theories. And there is that element of how do we know if it's really hypnosis or if something else is going on? I can see Steve is now back up here.
Back in the room.
There we go, literally back in the room. So yeah, Steve, what's your thoughts in terms of this overall topic that we're covering today in terms of, is hypnosis real?
Well, I think all here would probably, well, hopefully agree that we are doing something valid for people. I think the question is how that is being affected. And I heard you mention just now, as I was furiously fiddling with the controls, about the state-based theory of hypnosis versus the non-state basis theory. And I thought that might be a good place to start. Do you want me to sort of start with my thoughts and then come back to you?
Absolutely, because I think there are very much two different, kind of camps on this. The idea that hypnosis is a unique and specific state, and those that don't agree that, and they think that something else is going on. So yeah, it's a very valid point, because I think if people are considering this idea of if it is hypnosis real, I think for many people, they would only consider it real if hypnosis could be proven to have some kind of unique definable state. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, having sort of done a bit of research on this earlier today, state theories for hypnosis orientate around the fact that hypnotic inductions produce an altered state of consciousness. Now, I think James Tripp might have something to say about that. And then the associated trance, for want of a better word, that comes from that induction is in some way an altered brain function. This is sort of the traditional idea of state-based theory, and that's the responses we get are a result of that altered brain state, and therefore that gives stability for the response to the hypnosis over time. Non-state theories tend to orientate around the fact that, or the suggestion that participants are responding more to suggestions about hypnosis, the so-called placebo effect, and that the people who are involved in tests, in studies for all of this, they're actively engaging in this. So therefore there may be a degree of willingness to comply in that as well. So that's sort of a broad outline, as I see it, of the difference between state and non-state theories. But I'm sure there's going to be other views from yourself and amongst the audience.
Yeah, and it's a tricky one, because this debate has been going on for a while, and there isn't any kind of it's not like evolution and gravity where everyone can agree, okay, yeah, it definitely is this thing. That there's still a big division as to whether it is this kind of definable state. Things like MRIs and CAT scans have attempted to kind of show different brain activity under the state, or under the the guise of hypnosis, compared to, let's just say, talking to people. And also there are studies that show that when the identical things take place, so a script is being read, if participants are told that they're experiencing hypnosis rather than, let's just say, guided meditation or just talk therapy, then it does tend to have more impactful results, which would imply not that it is a unique state, but actually the expectations or the belief systems of the individual are creating something fundamentally different than if they don't look at it through that frame. Yeah. So, I do think it's an interesting thing. I don't think we're going to come to the conclusion as to whether or not it is a definable state or not today. But I think on the basis of the overall question, is hypnosis real? I think we can look at it in different things. And I don't think we need to know for sure if it's a unique state to say that hypnosis is real. One measurement of saying, is hypnosis real, is going to be, does it deliver on the promises that the client expects it to have? And fundamentally, if people are getting a positive result over whatever the experience is, whether you call it hypnosis, suggestion, talk therapy, whatever you call it, then it's real for the individual that experiences it. So, that itself is kind of, Mike Mandel is a big fan of the phrase, a model is only as good as how useful it is. And if you look at hypnosis as a model, well, it's actually very useful. From an evolutionary point of view, it wouldn't exist as a fairly widespread form of therapy if it didn't serve some kind of niche in the overall ecosystem of change work. So from my perspective, there's that lens to look at it, but there's also the lens of trance. A lot of people, I think, based on the state and non-state kind of theories, would consider state is a trance. And a lot of people unconsciously or consciously will use the phrase, if you're in hypnosis, then basically you're in a trance state. For me, I believe in a trance state, but I've got a particular definition which I find really useful. And it isn't based on hypnotic phenomenon. Right. It's simply based on, is the majority of their sensory awareness focusing inwards rather than outwards? And if it is, for me, that's a trance state. And I find that really useful, because so long as you can direct the attention of the client or the participant focusing on inward sensations rather than outward sensations, so the opposite of mindfulness, then that's a trance state. And if it's defined in that way, and they define that a trance state is hypnosis, and you can define trance as basically focusing inwards, then of course hypnosis is real based on the logic of that definition that you define it. If that makes sense. What's your thoughts on trance, Steve? Do you use the phrase trance? Do you feel like trance is a useful framework for clients to understand what's happening with hypnosis?
I think it's a double-edged sword. I prefer the expression trance-like state.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think people identify with that sort of waxy immobility that we see people in when they're under hypnosis. Things like rapid eye movements, facial flushing and all this sort of thing. And the way that people seem to go into some kind of some sort of physically altered state. It appears as though they are in some sort of a trance, and yet some of the leading brain studies on this show that it's only parts of the brain which are shutting down or communicating with each other in different ways, and the physicality of it, I think, can be a little confusing, and I think frankly it can be a little off-putting, because I think that's what's given birth to this idea or this misconception that people lose control when they're in hypnosis, because that's how some people look, especially when you see them on stage. Hypnosis acts, this sort of thing. I do agree with you to an extent about interoception versus exteroception. Although that said, I think sometimes we can get people to the point where they are focusing on things outside of them. So I don't think it's necessarily about looking inside. I think it can be about looking outside as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, a good example of that could be eye fixation or kind of manipulating distractions. And I think it's a good bridge. For me, I use it as a bridge to say, right, you're aware of my voice, but you might not be aware of the ticking clock. You might not be aware of the traffic outside the window. And yet now you are. And as you become aware of that, then it does what my body or what I need it to. The more you're focused on these things, the more the unconscious is responding to my suggestion. So I like all that kind of stuff. But I mean, fundamentally, I think it's really about, for me, this kind of element of hypnosis is so subjective. And therefore it's real or not real, depending on the definition you give it.
Yeah.
And the great thing is the audience generally, or the client is going to come in with some preconceived ideas as to what they think hypnosis is. For me, one of the main objectives of the pre-talk is to align what I see hypnosis as to match up with what they see hypnosis as. So then when I deliver, their hypnosis experience, it kind of aligns, because, in the early days, there'd be questions like, well, I don't think it worked because I can remember everything. So effectively it is that element of getting people on the same page. If you define hypnosis as, a unique state where you've got complete amnesia, and you follow every suggestion, even if it doesn't align with your values, well, then people are going to say, yeah, hypnosis is fake. You know? And if you don't have the element of suggestion involved or placebo or expectation, and you say, right, it's entirely based on what happens in this unique, verifiable, measurable state based on brainwave activity, again, you could say, well, hypnosis isn't really real based on that definition. But if you base it on an experience that enables someone to make a change that they were unable to make by themselves, or experience a unique state that disassociates from certain things, then actually it's quite, it's very real for the individual that experiences it. I think it's almost like, an emotion. If you kind of went to a stranger and you said, is love real? It's kind of like, they'll be like, yeah, it definitely is. It's like, prove it. give me the science that proves that love is real. And it's kind of like, that's kind of how it is with hypnosis, in the sense that we all, as hypnotists, we all know it's real because we experience it, but it's not the easiest thing to explain. It's quite a challenging thing. Appreciate that we're chatting a lot up here. If you are in the audience and you've got a question or an observation, or maybe you're aware of some studies or things about the validity and the, that kind of proof, if you like, evidence of hypnosis, raise your hand. We'll get you up on stage. Great to have. The more the merrier in these kind of conversations here. If you haven't been on Clubhouse that often, just raise your hand, and then that kind of gives us the opportunity to kind of get you up on stage, and then you can kind of ask questions or make a point or whatever you need to.
You made a point just now,
Adam. Sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Come on, Sally.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask about what do you think of meditation? Because I recently did a course about developing my intuition, and part of that was using meditations to envisage certain things. Let's just put it that way. And I found on one of the meditations I did, I sort of went into like a trance-like state where I don't know. It was really weird for me. It's not something I've experienced under. It's different to being under hypnosis, but it was definitely a trance-like state. So I don't know how you feel about meditation and whether you can achieve trance-like states within that. I guess if hypnosis isn't real, why do people fear it so much?
I mean, that's a good thing. But the thing is, some people would argue that God isn't real, and yet they're fearful of God, or that magic isn't real, and there's lots of people fearful of that, because fundamentally it's about belief systems. And if you believe something to be dangerous, or if you believe something to be powerful, then that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where it creates the very dynamics that make it powerful. It's almost like the emperor's clothes. It's kind of like, it's as powerful as people allow their belief system to allow it. And you do hear, kind of stories of kind of witchcraft and thing, where clearly that's a combination of, some kind of ritual gets people in a unique state, and very powerful expectation and trance state. I mean, faith healing, in my opinion, has a lot of hypnosis. There's lots of things where I think it maps over into other areas of life. So I don't necessarily, just because somebody fears something, that makes it real. What I do feel, though, is this element of, is it useful? And I look at this phrase useful for belief systems. I look at it in terms of, is it useful to have one value higher than another value? Is hypnosis a useful model to create change? I think it's really useful. So from that basis, yes. On the point of meditation, I would say, I get at least 2 or 3 episodes out on my Hypnotist podcast. I would say a lot of them, are guided meditation more than hypnosis. But it's all wrapped in this frame of, I'm the hypnotist, there is an induction, and change is going to take place. So for me, the key thing on a Venn diagram, I think guided meditation and hypnosis overlap massively. The key bit that is there in hypnosis that isn't there in guided meditation, for me, great to hear anyone else's opinion, is this element of an expectation and an intention to change something. For me, hypnosis is a catalyst for change. Whereas actually, I think the presupposition for guided meditation is a presupposition of relaxation and kind of escapism, not necessarily change. So I do think they are close relatives, but there is a distinct difference. And I don't think if someone was, an expert in guided meditation, they're not going to ask anywhere near the same quantity and detailed questions that I would ask before a hypnosis session, because I don't think they have a diagnostic approach. I don't think they're trying to choose their words depending on the reality and the expectations and the issues of the client. Whereas I'm absolutely doing that and calibrating along while I'm going along that process. I think for someone doing guided meditation, they're probably more often than not reading a script that they've already decided that they're going to read. And that's almost like watching a movie. I think guided meditation, it's already been written and you're going along with the flow. Whereas hypnosis, in my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, my hypnosis session, I don't know how it's going to be because I haven't spoken to the client yet. And therefore, not only is my hypnosis a reflection of the needs and the priorities of the client, but it evolves during the hypnosis session, depending on the reactions that I'm getting and those kind of nonverbal communication, idiomotor responses. I'm adjusting while I'm in the flow. Whereas guided meditation, I have a feeling that it's going to be that way no matter who the client is and what's going to happen. It is what it is. Does that ring true for you, Sally? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would have agreed with you before doing this course, but there was more to it than meditation. But what it has given me since doing it is, I don't know. I always wanted to be a intuitive therapist and go with what the client is presenting. And since I've done this course, that's happened more for me, because I've changed tack in mid-session because I've read something from the client. Now, whether that's something that you do yourself in a session, purely hypnosis, but for me it certainly enhanced it. And I think the course I did with using the meditation was to take that one step further and discover extra things about yourself for yourself. So I get it that guided meditations that you can download are more general, and that they can be recorded beforehand. Using meditation to increase your intuition and sort of learn to read people, for me, has been a revelation because I didn't think I could do it. Right, and I found that I could.
How did that work for you, Sally? Just can you just sort of break that experience down about how meditation increased your sense of intuition about working with clients?
Well, without talking about the course in detail,
of course,
it was luckily a free course, and I really enjoyed it. It was a 5-week course, and at the first week I thought, oh no, I'm not sure about this, and I kept on with it. But the meditations were like to I don't know, to get you into a certain state where you took that one step further. And for me, it's been a revelation. And since I've done that, I very hard to describe. In this course, you go into breakout rooms and you read people, and you say whatever's coming into your mind, and then they give you feedback. And for me, it was a whoa. How did I get that? Now, is that a sort of hypnosis that you're sort of in hypnosis?
I would say
I would agree. Yeah.
I think if you're doing guided meditation and you're adding calibration and intention and some type of expectation of change, that is hypnosis in my book. That is hypnosis. It might be under the guise of, or the label of, let's say, guided meditation, but actually the label doesn't define what it actually is. You see hypnosis when you are a hypnotist, as we all are. You see hypnosis everywhere. You see it in the rhythm and the inflection of language in a politician doing a speech. You see it in, let's say, a traffic warden or a police officer, based on posture and tonality, giving a suggestion where no isn't really an answer. You see it everywhere. Because for me, hypnosis isn't only something that hypnotists can do if they've had a certain qualification or training. It's a way of communicating that fundamentally is designed to do something. And that is, two things for me: one, create change, and secondly, harness unconscious belief systems or responses. It's designed to do that. So, the idea that we have to kind of, and I think some hypnotists do want to make it this kind of precious thing that only an exclusive group, almost like the hypnosis version of a magic circle, right? We need to make it really exclusive and not everyone can do it. I get why, because it puts a premium on it and it kind of makes it very prestigious and elite. But the reality is, some of the best hypnotists that I've seen aren't hypnotists. They wouldn't consider themselves hypnotists, but they've got all the skills and they're doing things and they're communicating with people's unconscious mind. That's hypnosis in my book. That's what it actually is.
Who was it who coined the phrase? I think it was one of the show organizers from a few years ago, and for the strap line for their show, they said, hypnosis, it's not what you think it is, it's what you think it is. Who was it? Who did that? I can't remember now. I think we bring our own interpretation to this, and we've seen the work that James Tripp has done, by and others as well, of effectively getting rid of inductions and the idea of trance. So if hypnosis can be done without an induction, which it clearly can, and without effectively a trance, which if we're saying politicians can do it, then that there is no formal trance there. I mean, whether you look at Hitler from the 1930s addressing crowds at Nuremberg, or I'm not drawing any comparisons with Boris Johnson, but all these politicians, or a lot of these politicians, have this ability to do that. If we are saying that they are using hypnosis, then what really is hypnosis? What are we left with? What are the elements that are bringing it? And I think a large part of it is expectation. And talking to people like Carl Smith and James Tripp, people like that, they will all say that it's all in the pre-talk, and that pre-talk extends all the way back to their websites and to their media presence they've built up. And people have this sort of idea built up in advance of what the situation is going to be and what their expectations are. And I think that's all effectively part of the pre-talk.
I would say intention plays a part in what is your intention with hypnosis. Because obviously as therapists, we are looking to improve people's lives. And that's not always the case with, maybe the politicians and things like that. They're using it to sway people into something that they want rather than what the people want. So I guess for me, as a therapist, it's the intention behind it and why you are using it.
I agree with that, Sally. But I also think congruency is a big ingredient in an effective hypnotist. And I think a lot of these politicians have been able to hypnotize themselves into convincing themselves that they think they're actually doing something good. Won't get political here, but I do think there is this element of once you've got this belief system that you're doing something good for other people, then you're going to be more congruent in how you communicate. And you can, the thing is, in the realm of communication, it's very easy to see those people that are incongruent and congruent. As hypnotists, we've got, I think, a higher level of sensory acuity than most, because we are constantly looking for nonverbal communication, and therefore we get a sense of who's congruent and who isn't. And I think congruency is a crucial part of how you build rapport, how you communicate consciously and unconsciously, how you deliver on your intention, how you meet that expectation. All these things, require an element of congruency. And I think, I do think a lot of these politicians, the politicians that are successful at some level, have convinced themselves that they are doing something good in the world, even if that's a bit of self-hypnosis on themselves. Sally, have you ever had any doubts, throughout, your life as to, did you ever kind of like think, what, I don't even know if this hypnosis thing is real?
No. No. I had hypnotherapy in the past for various issues. I think I mentioned about weight loss, about weight previously on a room. And no, I didn't. And then when I embarked on my training as a hypnotherapist, the results that, I saw and experienced myself were, I guess, convinced me that it was real. But I guess that's me, and everybody else, can feel the way they feel about it. For me, I don't know. I do it because I can help people and I love it. For me, it's real, but not everybody believes that, and I think some people can take convincing. But
I think it's as real as you define it to be, and when I pretended to be hypnotized going up on stage on a Paul McKenna show once, I thought the whole thing's bullshit. I thought, here I am just going along with it, but then if you define it as, was I following suggestions? Well, yeah, I was. Was I doing things that I wouldn't normally do? Well, yeah, I was. Did I feel like I was hypnotized? Not at all. So for me, that's why my first dissertation was, is hypnosis real, or are people simply playing along? Because I felt like I was simply playing along. And I do think this element of real hypnosis has so many different variables to make it effective outside of whatever is happening hypnotically. That element that Steve was talking about there of the pre-talk starts with the website. For me, I'm a big fan of the halo effect. This idea that people will bring a belief system along with them into the situation. That's why I was based on Harley Street. That's why, I don't do it so much now, but for the first, 3 years of being a hypnotist, always the 3-piece suit, always the expensive watch, because I know that creates a halo effect of them, and they're taking that and think, oh, if you can afford a watch like this, then he must be very competent. If he's in Harley Street, he must be very good. If he's charging this much, he must be good. And all of that is creating belief systems before they even sit in that chair. And therefore, in a way, is that a form of hypnosis, or is that just priming? I think there's lots of other psychological principles going on outside of hypnosis that still improve the efficacy. Yeah, sorry, go on, Steve.
Yeah, I think you definitely hit on something there, and that's something which we can call prestige. Now, prestige can be expressed in all sorts of different ways. It can be a very quiet confidence with some practitioners. It can be a more overt style, and we know people who have that as well. But that congruence, taken a stage further, becomes prestige. And whether it's through like an address in Harley Street, or the fact that somebody has maybe they have a lot of qualifications and certificates up on their wall, that's a form of prestige. The way people can dress sometimes can give them that prestige, which is transmitted over onto clients as well. And that also helps match their expectations as to what they're looking for as well.
I agree. It's that kind of element of priming, giving, effectively non-verbal suggestions. People are expecting a particular thing, and that's everything from like testimonials on your website to, I always think if you get a client from a referral, you're already halfway there, because they've got evidence within their own life that you've created a change for someone else, and they bring that into the session with them. I can see we've got some very competent hypnotherapists in the audience here. If you would like to contribute in some way, raise your hand, we'll get you up on stage. It might just be something that you do that, helps to reassure clients that hypnosis is real. It may be something that helped clarify something in your mind, as to how you define hypnosis. But if you would like to contribute, raise your hand. We'll get you up on stage and we'll hit your points. In
the meantime, just sort of trying to bring this back to the original premise. Is hypnosis real? Well, we'd have to define what it is. Now, it's probably easy to define what it's not. It isn't necessarily dependent upon an induction. It's not necessarily dependent upon
any trance or trance-like state, because NLP can bring about changes which uses elements of hypnosis, but is not formal hypnosis at the same time. So I'm wondering, what do we think we're left with? What is this ability we have to influence people?
I disagree about NLP, because I see NLP as a practitioner as being a more conscious state. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it.
Yeah.
And the difference between that and hypnosis is, like Adam said, there are some theories that the unconscious doesn't exist, but for me, it's using that awareness of something that's there that you're not conscious of. Let's put it that way.
But if you define unconscious as not being aware of it, which is how I define it, then it must be real, because I think it was Miller in 1957 that came up with the short-term memory theory of the magic number 7 plus or minus 2, that as humans, we can only pay attention to about between 5 and 9 things at any one point in time anyway. And therefore everything else is unconscious. So unless you're talking or thinking about a belief, that belief is unconscious. Unless you're thinking or talking about a memory, that memory is unconscious. And for me, that's the key distinction, because Steve is right. CBT involves a positive intention, an element of expectation, and a desire to create change. And yet we definitely wouldn't consider that hypnosis. You can bring in CBT principles into hypnotherapy. I use a lot of NLP techniques, either during, prior, or around. A lot of my phobia work actually mainly uses pattern interrupts and kind of effectively changing how people think and the reframes that come from NLP more than hypnosis. So I agree with you, Sally. I think the fundamental difference is that hypnosis really is mainly aimed at doing something unconsciously rather than consciously. And it's definitely directive rather than undirective. Look, we could say psychoanalysis is very non-directive. So it's directive in the way that NLP is. But the key distinction, I think, with other talk therapies is that it's designed to work at an unconscious level rather than be overtly commercial, which is why there's so much metaphor in there. There's so much embedded commands. There's so much of things that is deliberately designed to communicate something that the conscious mind wouldn't pick up on. I don't know if either of you would agree or disagree on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's often said that if you could solve your problem consciously, why would you need therapy or hypnosis? And the very fact that you do something but you're not aware of why means, for me, that it's an unconscious habit or thing. Like everything we do, like when we get up in the morning, and a lot of that is habit, because you learn to do that when you start to walk, you learn how to do it, and then it just becomes an unconscious mechanism for getting around, or not, as the case may be.
No, I agree, Sally, and the mind makes shortcuts, and you probably know this, but after we get to about the age of 3, the processing power for walking is transferred to the spine. The brain doesn't do it anymore. And that's why if people have back injuries, sometimes they can't walk. And we automate everything. I mean, there's 500 odd enzymes in the liver which are being balanced, white blood cells being sent to, damaged parts of the skin, and T cells being manufactured, all this sort of thing. We don't consciously think of these things. They are happening on an automated level. Are we saying that's the same as hypnosis? I don't quite see it in that way myself, but I think we are able to bring about maybe new neural pathways which do tend to lend a degree of automation to our lives. So I think in that sense we do. But I notice Irene's just come on, so should we hand back over to Irene?
Welcome, Irene.
Hello, everybody. Hello, it's a lovely conversation. Thank you for all the nuggets. Some good nuggets in there. I was thinking about it, whether I think it's real or not, and I do really believe in it, because I think that I think I am the testimony of it for anybody who sees me on social media or anybody who meets me, is the change that I have had in my life since I discovered hypnotherapy, since I've had hypnotherapy, and since I do it on myself. That the transformation just in how I feel, the transformation in how I am, is just, it's got to be evidence that we are the evidence for what we actually do on other people. When other people see that, they think, oh, what's she doing? I want some of that. And that's a natural thing. They look at people and they think, oh yeah, I want some of that. So and sometimes they're not really bothered how they get it. They just want to have it. And so they're already part way in to thinking that it's real when they see the results, I think, in someone else. I don't know what you think to that.
No, I think the fact that we are making changes sometimes in our own lives and of course in other people's lives, clearly something is going on. So clearly we all agree that hypnosis is a thing. But what the nature of that thing is, I suppose that's a different thing. And then we come back to what we were talking about at the beginning, state-based theory or non-state theory. What's your thoughts on that, Irene? Do you believe hypnosis is a state of mind, or do you think it's a non-state thing based on expectation and maybe placebo? Where do you stand on that?
I don't think it's placebo, because what I was thinking about before the chat today, because I saw the subject and I was thinking, what other modality is there that you can actually go into a part of the brain that you might not even be aware of what is even in there, and make a change in there? What other modality is there? I've tried quite a few things in my healing journey over the last few years, and I have not had anything that's been as powerful or long king as hypnotherapy.
I think on that, Irene, I mean, there are, I mean, if all the way back from, kind of Fritz Perls, to there are many variations of parts therapy that wouldn't necessarily call it parts therapy, but it has the same element of that, and therefore there is that kind of model of, you've got different parts in your unconscious, effectively things that you're not aware of. So whether they call it, a parental part or this, I've seen some modalities where they liken it to kind of animal metaphors and all this kind of stuff. So I do think that there are things where I think sometimes people are using hypnosis without knowing it's hypnosis. But again, it depends on the definition of hypnosis. I personally believe that anything that can create dramatic change at some level probably is using hypnotic principles. I'm a big fan of people like Wim Hof, David Goggins, people that can do incredible things that look superhuman. And when you listen to the podcast, when you listen to the interviews, they're constantly talking about their belief systems and their inner dialogue and all this kind of stuff. For me, that's a form of self-hypnosis. They're using these very principles to create a change, but they would not consider themselves using hypnosis. They would just call it a mindset or a way of thinking and those kind of things. But if you look at the core ingredients to it, are they doing something that fundamentally changes their belief systems? Are they doing things? I mean, I don't know if you've seen much of what Wim Hof has done, but so much of what he does is clearly altering unconscious processes by a combination of kind of physical conditioning, but also belief systems as to what he's doing. There's a physiological and kind of psychological component to that, and I think that's the bit that makes hypnosis really exciting. The downside is that, I mean, if we address the elephant in the room, if any of us were challenged in court to say, right, you're a hypnotist, prove that hypnosis is real, we can't do it. We cannot provide the evidence that hypnosis is real. We would be saying all the kind of stuff that we've said on this show today, which is, oh, we know it's real because we get results, and we know it's doing fundamentally different things to other things. But could we actually prove that hypnosis is real in a court of law? I don't think I would feel confident taking that case. I don't know if anyone else would.
No, I think you're on very sticky ground.
So it's this weird thing where we know it's real because we live it and we work with it, and we've seen the results in ourselves. But equally, I would say, just because you believe something doesn't mean it's real. It's whether or not it's useful. I'm not religious, but for those people that are religious, I would say having belief systems, if it's useful in improving the quality of their life, good for them. I believe in hypnosis because it's a framework for me communicating with clients in a way that creates positive change. So therefore it's useful for me. I think the more important question isn't, is hypnosis real? Is hypnosis useful? And I would say categorically, yes, it is. Even if it's something that we can't really prove or define, if that's not a weird way of explaining it.
Yeah, I was
maybe do a demo in court, Adam. Change the prosecutor's view or something. I don't know, but just a stupid suggestion. But I take what you're saying.
Good one.
I think Richard Bandler was probably the first person to do hypnosis in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was just thinking back to Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile, and of course that it took ages for somebody to break the 4-minute mile record. But then, as soon as he'd done it, I think it was broken several times over the next 18 months, and maybe that was a kind of hypnosis. All of a sudden, somebody had shown the way to something which people had thought was impossible up to that point.
It's certainly evidence of a belief system, in that sense of whenever people feel that something isn't possible, well, then you get a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the belief cycle. If something isn't, effectively it's learned helplessness, isn't it? It's kind of, if you believe that something can't change, your resourcefulness to try and change it is virtually non-existent. And therefore you don't take any action to change it. And therefore the results prove that you were right all along and this thing isn't possible to change. And how many people do we see? Here's the interesting thing about hypnosis. We're never the first people to be called. Never.
Mm-hmm.
They see everyone else but us.
Right. Yeah.
And we're the last people. So effectively,
we're one up from witch doctors. Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah.
So, I used to work with a lot of weight loss clients. They see the personal trainer first. They read all the diet books first. They go to Slimming World first. They do all these other things first. And only when they've got to a point of desperation because these things aren't working for them, do they then start to think, they're so desperate to try something else. And here's the key thing. At that point, they have a belief that it is not possible for them to do it themselves. So therefore, they're in the maze and they don't know how to get out. And our job as hypnotists is to give them that resourceful feeling and that belief back. And in my experience, hypnosis is a very useful tool for belief change. Is it the only way of changing beliefs? No, of course it isn't. Education is a way that you can change a belief. You can take someone from ignorance to awareness just by teaching them something new. There is a reason why the majority of people are the religion that is dominant in the country that they grew up with, born in, or they have their parents. It's because there was a void there and they were told certain things and they accepted those beliefs to be true. And therefore they're stuck until something creates that kind of change. So is hypnosis the only way to change beliefs and only way to change behavior? Far from it. It's just a very useful way, I think. But, there's no way in the world that we can prove that hypnosis is real. No way.
No. I see Derek's come on. Can we get Derek up and hear what he's got to say?
Oh, of course we can. Yeah, I did make you a moderator, so I think.
Sorry, I didn't want to cross over from you. That's all.
No problem at all. So I think you can join us now, Derek.
Hi, yeah. I was quite interested actually. I think we're giving ourselves quite a hard time asking to prove hypnosis is real. In science, generally, people, don't prove anything. They have theories with a lot of evidence, but it's very rarely regarded as proof, and so I don't think we have to take it that far. There are many, many, many things in science that are generally accepted as being the correct and factual and, I guess, proof. But it's not really proof. It's just all the other theories have been discarded. So, I don't think we have to prove it. I just think we have to show that, what we're saying is the best fit, and that it is shown to exist. There's stuff in science that will never be proven, but we just accept it as being a fact.
I think that's a good point. Yeah. I was just reading something earlier on today, funnily enough, Derek, he just reminded me of this. For thousands of years, we've been watching apples falling out of trees. And yet it was only in 2015, by studying two black holes, which are, I think, 15 million light years away or something daft like that, that we've been able to discover graviton waves, which underpin the theory of gravity. So we now have proof for gravity after thousands of years of watching apples falling out of trees, which we all know gravity is a force. So I think you're right there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Derek. I think, is anyone asking us to prove if hypnosis is real? No one is. No one is, because I think they're looking at it in the same way, which is it useful? Does it serve a niche? Does it actually help people? I would say the percentage of, let's say, corrupt or deceitful hypnotists, probably under 1%. Like the vast majority of hypnotherapists trying to do good things for people in a way that improves the quality of their life. So there isn't really a queue of people saying, right, hold on, you've got to prove that hypnosis is real. Where that happens, I think more often, particularly in the UK, is this idea of stage hypnosis. And actually, because we can't prove that hypnosis is real or not, you get laws in certain countries where you need a license to be a hypnotist. Actually, you don't need a license to be a hypnotist because no one can prove that hypnosis is real. You need a license to call yourself a hypnotist is really what you need in certain countries. In the UK, stage hypnosis requires a license to do a performance. And yet, Tony Robbins, when he does his Unleash the Power Within things in London, is definitely using hypnotic language. He's using suggestions. He's, anchoring emotional states. He's just not calling it hypnosis, and therefore he doesn't need a license to do stage hypnosis. So I think there is an element of, is it useful? Yes. But do we have to call it hypnosis? Well, I think there is a little bit of a boost in efficacy when you do call it hypnosis, but certainly you don't need to call it hypnosis. And I think you've also got this weird thing coming on that I think part of the reason why hypnosis is a word that is used a lot, and people call themselves hypnotherapists. When people call themselves things like NLP practitioners, or maybe a subdivision or a particular niche of hypnosis, and that's how they market themselves, they don't get any clients. When they call themselves a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist, they tend to get more, because I think there is this mystique and power given to the word hypnosis that then creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's seen as something that gives them something beyond their capabilities themselves to create that change. I don't know what your thoughts there are, Derek.
Yeah, I absolutely. My definition, I guess, of hypnosis is purely a change of focus, and I think by changing focus, by consciously changing focus, you do. This has been mentioned right at the start of this session. What was that? It does pull on subconscious resources. And for me, there are huge benefits and huge untapped benefits. I've got a client, right, and this is maybe for me, this has been a recent defining moment in exploring hypnosis and is it real. is it just following an authoritarian figure? Is it just suggestion? Is it expectation? Is it just compliance? I've got a client at the moment. She's a female. She's in her early 40s. 9 years ago, she was involved in a major car accident. She was in hospital for several months. It left her with lasting injuries, one of which, and this is slightly embarrassing, slightly risky here, but I'm going to go with it. One of the issues that she's had for the last 9 years is a lack of sensation in the left side of her bottom. Okay, so her bottom on the left side is always cold, it's always numb. And basically, she's had a few sessions with me now, and the sensation and the kind of warmth, she's always felt it was, as her word, it was frozen. The sensation is coming back and the circulation is coming back after 9 years. Now, you can't say that's compliance. You can't say it's, how do you define that? How, it's not, it's not someone, I'll just pretend, I'll just go along with it. This is a change, a physical change, a physical neurological change. Her nervous system has, found new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And she's actually surprising herself. I can actually feel the left side of my bottom when I sit down now. She's got a long way to go. We're at early stages. But for me, that's, a strong validation of the power of hypnosis. And it kind of negates, for me, it negates just that social compliance kind of thing. It's not something you can consciously make happen,
Yeah.
So, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
And taking it back to the beginning when I talked about this dissertation I did about, is hypnosis real? Or are we just playing along? The conclusion that I came to is that if it was just playing along, how do we explain some of the things like extreme, anesthesia reactions? So like people going through, immense kind of pain kind of things, but without experiencing that. That would be something you'd be crazy to kind of play along with. The counter argument to that would be that sometimes you see, magicians and that kind of stuff doing things that look very, very painful, and yet they don't experience the pain. They just, again, have that kind of mindset of, well, I don't experience pain in that situation. But fundamentally to me, I would always take it back to, is hypnosis useful in creating outcomes and results that are beneficial? And if it is useful, I think that's infinitely more valuable than if we can prove if it's real, because nobody cares if you can prove if it's real or not. They just care of, can you help, them stop smoking? Can you help them with that addiction? Can you help them lose weight? Can you help them with that phobia? And if you can, they couldn't care less if it's real or not. They're just happy with the result, that a change has taken place that it hasn't done before. We've come to the end of the hour. So, Steve, this was your idea for a topic for today. Thank you so much for co-hosting. I don't know if you want to give a bit of a wrap up and a summary.
Yeah, again, I'm just going back to what we talked about at the beginning, state versus non-state theory of hypnosis, and we've heard a variety of different opinions on this. I would suggest that there's both going on at the same time. I think some of the studies done at Stanford now prove that different areas of the brain are affected, and the way different parts of the brain communicate with each other. That's been proven by MRI studies. And yet there are other instances where maybe those effects aren't noted, but other things come into play as well, whether we want to call that placebo, suggestion, expectation. I think both are true at the same time. But I think ultimately this comes down to that wonderful quote, and I forget who said it, hypnosis it's not what you think it is. It's what you think it is, or it's what you think it is. I think it's different things to all people. But I want to say thank you to everybody who's come along tonight, and thank you to you, Adam, for the opportunity to be up on stage with you.
No, it's great. And thank you to everyone that joined us up on stage, Derek, Sally, and Irene there. Really appreciate that. And to you in the audience, even if you didn't raise your hand and contribute on stage, really appreciate you being here and supporting. I hope you found our topic and conversation today useful. If you've got any suggestions for any future topics, feel free to drop me a message. I think you can find my Instagram profile on here. You can drop me a direct message there if you've got any suggestions. If it's an area that you're really knowledgeable about, more than welcome to co-host with us. We're very keen to get other speakers and co-hosts up on stage. But just one final big thank you for Steve. If Steve didn't agree to kind of co-host today, we probably wouldn't have done it. Just because it would have been me and perhaps Sally joining me up here because she felt sorry for me struggling in that first 2 minutes.
Oh, so, sorry, Adam. That wasn't the only reason.
No, I'm teasing you, Sally. But thank you so much, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye now.